I don't think I agree with that.
Well, I do.
Here we are, guys.
We are live. Happy whatever day it is.
It's Blur's Day. I think it's Blur's Day.
It's
Blur's
Thursday.
Day's a good one. That's why I always have to look at my phone. I don't know.
Right,
what it is.
right.
I don't even look anymore. Well, I am super excited, Renee, because this is somebody I've talked about for years, right? Shaun Rawls is here visiting. I've known Shaun 15 years, I think now.
Pretty close.
Brand new baby agent, getting into real estate in Atlanta, Georgia. Shaun was my OP. He owned our offices. And Shaun and Brad Feynman, those are two people that I always talk about that were always so inspiring and just amazing in my life. And fast forward to 2008 when I moved to Austin, Texas, I was no longer in Shaun and Brad's offices anymore, but they were still a part of my life. Whenever they were in Austin, I would still be in their masterminds and classes and things like that. And so when we talk about leadership, when we talk about leadership from the heart, Shaun Rawls is one of those people. And I love seeing you here. I mean, I'm super excited to have you. So thank you for joining us.
Well, hi, Renee. Thanks for having me. This is fun. Of course, when you said you wanted me to do something, I was excited to get to see you and interact with you because it's been too long. And I love what you were doing. I think it sounds like you guys have really stepped up with some leadership opportunities for people just out of crisis. And I think that's awesome. Leadership always shows up when it's supposed to. So kudos to you two for all that you're doing for a lot of people out there, I'm sure.
Well, thanks. And tell us about kind of what you're doing. I mean, you've written a book, you're still speaking, you're still motivating, you're still inspiring. How are things going in the current times, and what are you seeing, and how are you guiding people?
That's kind of a loaded question because I don't know how I'm guiding people. I mean, it's interesting being out of a leadership role in an official capacity. But watching, I'm such an observer to what's going on and taking a temperature of what people are thinking and doing and feeling. And when this whole thing kind of came out of the gates, I mean, it really took me back to the last shift that we had, the one where I met you, obviously. And I thought, I probably have a few things that I could throw out there that might be helpful to people. So I've written a couple of things and spoken on some podcasts and done some things, and who knows? But it's my goal is I think that in all the isolation, people need to not feel alone and find their tribe, right? And there are so many things that I was talking yesterday. There's a spectrum from hey, everything's awesome to the sky is falling, and we're all on that spectrum somewhere, right? And wherever you are on it, there are people that you can cling to that will make you feel better about your thought process and maybe help pull you up to a better thought process, or even pull you down to a worse thought process. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing right now is if you're not taking this time to reassess a lot of things in your life and in your business, you're missing a huge opportunity. Because now's the time where anytime you go through crisis, it's one of the gifts of crisis is you're always surprised by who shows up, right? For instance, you guys have shown up in a time of crisis, maybe not as intimately or personally to some people, but probably to some people you have. But it's even more interesting who doesn't show up, who should be stepping up that's not. But pay attention to those things, because the people that you want to carry with you going forward are the people who are showing up. And the people that you probably don't need to carry with you any longer are the people who probably aren't. And, who's are probably one of the biggest keys to life and living a good one. So make sure you're doing a little diagram and trying to figure out who are the who's in my life that I want to be more a part of, who I want to be closer to, who I want to spend more time with, who I want to learn from, who I want to mentor me, who I want to follow, because you're going to have to be purposeful about it. I was on a call yesterday, and I think my biggest concern right now, for the longest time, we've been worried about, everybody's saying, how long is this going to be? When's it going to end? When do I get back to normal? And we've kind of all been, we were going 120 miles an hour on the road, and then we turned the corner and there was a red light, right? And you just screeched to a pretty much a stop, and you're waiting for the light to turn green. And I think everybody's waiting for the light to turn green, but my concern with it turning green is if it were to turn green today, are you okay with that? Have you really done what you need to? Because if nothing else, you really should be going, here are the things that I've really learned about myself, or I've learned about my family or my marriage or my relationships or my business or my spiritual life or my health disciplines or the way I eat, that I don't want to stop when I go back to 120 miles an hour. And and I think everybody needs to make that list like right now, like before you have a chance to say it with other things interfering with that answer, and say, if I could wave a magic wand and carry these things about the last 4 weeks with me for the rest of my life, what would they be? And just write it down and think about it, and then and really give some thought to how is that going to be real for you? How are you going to make that happen? Because we're going to go back to being really busy, right? We're going to go back to being busier, crazier than we've ever been, perhaps. But if there's one, even this Zoom thing, I mean, I really think that in our industry of real estate, in other industries as well, this has created a new norm for efficiency. And people are going, I can actually list a house on Zoom. I don't have to race and eat McDonald's French fries at 70 miles an hour, racing to an appointment to be 10 minutes late to go list somebody's house. I can just sit here calmly, have a cup of coffee, and talk to somebody about their house, or talk to somebody about buying a house. Or a girl in Maryland found out, I'm just going to do my buyer seminar that I do every week. I'm going to do it online this time, and she had better results than ever doing it online. What efficiencies are going? I talked to a friend of mine who owns car dealerships in New York. Just last night, and we were talking about this very thing. And he said, "You know what?" Because I said, "How are you holding up? How are the dealerships doing?" He said, "Amazingly okay." He said, "We've gone all online. We've allowed the consumer to come in, make their offers, negotiate everything. The only thing we have to do is they have to meet us at the dealership and sign a piece of paper and take the keys to their car." He's like, it's really interesting how this has changed our business. He said, I think it's making us better. He said, I'm scared to say that, but I think it actually might be making us better. And I go, I think you're not alone. I think there's a lot of industries and a lot of professionals that if they're paying attention to those things, they are getting better. You just don't realize it at the time, but when it comes out of it and you're creating efficiencies, and whenever you create efficiencies, you're creating bigger profit margins for yourself. And I think you're creating more efficiencies at home. I think you're creating more efficiencies at work. And it's interesting. My biggest concern is I think the thought process has to change from when is this going to be over to am I ready for it to be over? And ready, I mean, am I prepared? Have I thought about it? Have I assessed my world? Do I know what I want to take with me in the afterlife of this crisis? And if you can answer yes to that, then you're ready for it. But if you haven't, and all you've done is complain about what you're missing and want to get back to work, then you've probably missed an opportunity to be reflective on a level that's going to stick around and maintain your level of happiness and joy for a long time, I think.
We talk about this unexpected gift of time, and that's really how I'm approaching each day. Because I have the tendency to be really, really, really busy. And I've actually had friends reach out to me saying, hey, Elizabeth, we're watching you. And it comes back to what you said earlier, people that are either with you or they're watching you or they're engaging. People are watching, and they've reached out and they're like, we see a calmer, softer, more peaceful Elizabeth.
Right.
Interactions. And I agree. I feel that way. I'm not running around with my hair on fire trying to do it all and trying to be what society thinks we should be doing, right? I'm letting my family dictate and my own desires for my business dictate what I should be doing as opposed to outside influences. And I'm with you. If it were green today, I don't want it to be green today.
Maybe yellow. Maybe go with caution. Let's go slow. Let's go slow.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I
It's
agree.
looking like in Florida, I think our government is probably thinking about, we'll be one of the first states to open up. And so that we'll be phasing in to that yellow. I agree. Maybe not green, but yellow. And so we've been talking to agents quite a bit about making sure the agents have their mindset wrapped around, it's not coming back to the way it was, right? Like there's probably going to be some new version, even if just for a while, of a new phase, a new environment. What advice do you give agents for giving them the ability to stay focused on the current circumstances rather than only longing for the circumstances they wish will be or they think will come back? Because that's difficult. Like we all struggle with that.
You do struggle with that. It's, I think one of the hardest lessons to learn, and I think we're all on a timeline of learning with it, but it is just realizing that anything other than now is imaginary. That's it. There's no reality to tomorrow for any of us, right? I mean, anything that we talk about, we hope we make X amount of dollars. We hope we get to move into this neighborhood. We hope that we get to go to college at this place. We hope that, but it's not, and some people are driven enough to make those hopes come true. But at the end of the day, they're just a vision that you have for yourself that you're either going to work daily to achieve or not. But you'll never get there if you don't take care of now. And I think if anything that we're supposed to learn from this, it's to embrace the absolute present moment without any attachment to tomorrow. And whether people realize it or not, that's kind of the exercise they've been going through. And the better you get at that, it's interesting how comfortable you get with the present once you lean into it. But most of us in our business we have a little bit of a desire to control things, right? If not a lot. And this is kind of taught all of the controlaholics that we really don't have control of certain things. And the only thing you can control is where you are in the moment and how you behave in the moment, and whether you have gratitude or fear or faith or whatever that is. And you have to focus on now. You have to take care of now. And if you do that, because we don't know when economies are going to open up, we don't know when things are going to resume. What I've been trying to explain to people is right now, the only thing, if you haven't been showing up as a great human being first, then you've been an idiot business person. This is not about making sales, and this is not about being number one. This is about being the person who cares the most. Be the person that shows up as the person they heard from the most, who did the coolest things, or who gave back in the most impressive ways, or the most unsuspecting ways, or be a human. And if you do that well, the rest is going to take care of itself. But I think everybody's trying to score touchdowns all the time. And right now, this is not a touchdown time. This is just a time to block and tackle, to do the stuff that's not really sexy, to do the stuff that's not going to make the highlight reel on ESPN. This is just about digging into your database, reconnecting, touching people, doing it in a meaningful way that makes sense, that has an impact. And if you do the right things now that you think you hope will make a difference in the short term, but the things that are going to make a difference in the long term, you're going to be fine. And that always goes back to the database. It always goes back to blocking and tackling. And I define short term and long term right now as short term is up until the point that things get back to normal, or all this is kind of moving in the rearview mirror. And then long term for me is from a business perspective, it's once this thing is in the rearview mirror, and it could be the week after. I don't really care or know, but I think that's the precipice difference between short term and long term for me. And look, we do know that the formula for succeeding over time has never changed and it never will. So if you're just doing the right things to make that happen, you're going to surprise yourself with what happens. And Elizabeth, if you recall, when you were with our group in 2008, we went into the shift probably as I think we were probably the third or fourth largest real estate company in terms of people and volume in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And we just Jerry and I got together, and our leaders got together, and Brad and all those guys, and we just kind of came up with a game plan of saying, okay, well, what do we believe will be helpful for everyone now? And what do we know will be helpful for everyone over time? If we had to keep things really simple and be repetitive. And the shift is what came up with our stats presentations, if you recall, because we felt like there was a lot of misinformation at the time. And we thought, let's at least come up with a system of truth in our business. And the truth was, the only thing that you couldn't argue was numbers. So we came up with these elaborate statistical presentations that we trained our agents on, and they in turn could go and present to buyers and sellers and help make sense of the madness in the market at the time. And we did a few other things, but we kept our message simple, and we stayed on point, we stayed on task. And we called it, at the time, we called it leading by faith, because we really didn't know where we were in the cycle, and we didn't know how long it was going to last. And we really didn't know if it was all going to work the way we hoped it would. But we put our chips on these particular things, and we stayed on them. And by 2010, which was arguably the bottom of the bottom, by 2010, we had emerged as the number one real estate company in terms of size and in terms of transactional volume. And we've never left that spot since. But it really was through the crisis and just kind of sharpening our saw and coming up with a couple of new things that really made us a little more competitive and a little more relevant, and allowed our agents to be a little more impactful and a little more trustworthy when they sat in front of people. And we could have a brand new agent sit down with somebody and have information like nobody else had in the business. And that was about the time that you came in, Elizabeth. So it was, we don't know.
Yeah, so I got licensed with you guys in 2005. And this is what I'm talking about, the leadership. I mean, information creates confidence, right? And we had, Atlanta, it was funny because when I was transferred to Austin and everybody said, oh my gosh, it's 2008. What are you doing in real estate? This is a horrible market. And I was like, no, I actually just came from Atlanta. We burst, right? Atlanta was a very different market than Austin. But because of the leadership that we had, that was very fear-based. I know 2008 is very different than what we're experiencing now, but it was still a lot of fear and unknown and uncertainty.
Sure.
And a lot of people's livelihoods and their homes and everything was challenged, right? But the leadership and the communication of positivity and knowledge is power, I think, is what helped us all, and helped me come to a new market. I was still doing real estate in Georgia and in Texas. I don't know if you remember me trying to balance both of those.
No, I do remember. And then you finally hit 2 feet in 2 canoes is hard to do, right?
It's a little hard, but I tried to do as much as I could, as much as possible with the information I was given. And so that leadership, I think, and that faith is really, I think, what's keeping me focused like I am now. I've been through something similar. When it came out, hindsight's 2020. I can look back and be like, oh my gosh, look at what I learned from that. How can I change or implement that into what's going on now? And I really think it comes back to perspective, but I go back to the leadership I was surrounded by.
I like what Shaun had mentioned about sharpening the saw. And, as I mentioned earlier, I am in a 2-realtor household. This household had seen the downturn before. And while the circumstances externally are obviously very different to what was experienced then as compared to, a global crisis we have now, the business adversity that you're referencing, Shaun, is still at the forefront of, if I compare the two and remember what it was like under my roof then, right? And what it was that do we lead with fear? Do we get up every day with fear? Or do we get up every day with as much tenacity as we can to figure it out based on the current circumstance? That is the same. And what's also the same is what it took then is sharpening the saw, right? And focusing on the 101 fundamentals of your business, same as it is now.
That's right. No, it's fundamentally the reaction to the crisis. While the crises are different, it's the reaction that it feels the same because it's all fear based, right? So it's the more you can get out of that, and it's interesting. I've been one of the authors I've kind of attached to lately is Eckhart Tolle. And his book on the power of now has been really an interesting read at the moment because he really puts a lot of things in perspective. And there's just, when you realize that you just have to stay focused right in the moment and just stay there day in and day out. Know what you're supposed to do for today. Know what you're supposed to do for today. Know what you're supposed to do for today. And that's not just from a business perspective. I think it's, I think sharpening the saw on a lot of levels, because, you know, what's interesting, Elizabeth, is I think that having, as you said, having gone through this before, you don't really appreciate that until you get a chance to dust off those cleats in another type of crisis, right? And you realize, hey, I got through that. And how did I get through that? And what worked then, or what did I have to do, or what did I have to change, or what was important and what was unimportant? And you just kind of go back into that tool bag and you just kind of, well, I don't need this wrench anymore, and I don't need that, and I don't need that, and I don't need that, but this I'm going to hang on to, and this I'm going to hang on to. And it's experience is an awesome thing because again, it does help you create a perspective. And when you watch people that kind of address these, and their first reaction is a fear-based reaction, it's you get a chance to kind of level them off a little bit and just go, what exactly are you scared of, right? And most and so what do you, and then you just say, what are you going to do about it, right? So what can you possibly do about it? So tell me what you can do right now that will alleviate your fear, because you can't worrying about something a month or two from now. Really going to, I mean, that's a horrible way to live. So let's just talk about today. And then let's talk again tomorrow about tomorrow. And let's talk again on Thursday about Thursday. And let's just talk about it. And let's stay focused on right now, what we can control, what we can do, because amazingly, it calms you. It gives you a sense of confidence, as you said. And I think if people can maintain that sense of peace and confidence, even when there's all kinds of stuff just swirling around outside of you, it really changes what you believe you can do, and you can see things so much more clearly and when you look at them, right? I think you've got to take the chance to slow down right now and think about it, because if you just to live through it is one thing, but to live through it and really kind of assess things as you do and kind of evaluate things as you go through it, it makes the experience so much more worthwhile, not just for what's on the other side of it for you, but it also makes it more worthwhile the next time something happens and everybody thinks the world's falling apart and you go, it's not falling apart, right? And we've all seen those people that grew up in the Depression or survived concentration camps, and and without any personal attachment or experience of something that bad, we just kind of don't really realize what these people have lived through. But they have a sense of confidence and a lack of fear that we'll never know, because they experienced something just 10 times more traumatic than what we happen to be living through. So it is about perspective. And I think everybody just has to kind of think about what's important to you, and what do you need around you to kind of be the person you want to be on the other side of it.
I love that. I mean, I think about the classes and the I don't want to say speeches. Those aren't really the words, but I mean, anytime you would get up in front of the group or get in front of us, it's just, you would always instill that hope and that truth and that messaging. It's funny. Andy Stanley, I still watch Andy Stanley. I'm still tied.
He's great. Yeah, we go there, right?
And I'm actually loving it because here every Sunday we're like, oh, we're going to tune back into Andy so we get reconnected. But he was talking about that. He was talking about, those that were in concentration camps or POWs or things like that. He was interviewing somebody and they said, why did you survive? And he said, because I just take one day at a time. And he goes, why didn't the other people survive? He's like, they were the optimists. They were just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do now. This is what we're going to do now. But they always set themselves up to fail. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's the same thing you're saying. Just take one day at a time. I keep saying one foot in front of the other. I had an agent that I've been helping with that's reached out, and she had three back-to-back closings that were all dominoed on each other. And I was celebrating that for her. I was like, this is huge.
Sure.
And she was so negative and fearful about it. And I said, talk to me. What am I missing? She was like, yeah, this is great, but this is all I have. I'm like, you're coming from a scarcity mentality. I said, you need to take this win and one day at a time. And I think that's what you're talking about is people are looking way too far in advance and hope. They hope. I love what you were saying. Everything's imaginary. It's not given. The only thing we have is right now that's given. So I think that's powerful. So thank you for sharing.
No, it's my pleasure. I think, the big question is, what are you reading? Who are you talking to? What are you watching that's making you be better and feel better, right? Because, and pay attention to those things. It's, I don't, whatever works for you. Everybody's got a different formula for what works for them, but pick up a book that has the ability to improve your mindset, or watch a TED Talk that makes you go, wow, or watch a podcast like this that has something that's just going to stick, that doesn't just make you feel better now, but may stick with you for the rest of your career. Who knows, right? But be one of those people that's hungry for something to help me. Because again, going back to what we talked about, I can't remember if we were live or not at the time, but when, if you, whatever you think about, you'll find all the evidence you need to prove yourself right. So if you wake up and go, I'm going to find something really cool today, and I'm going to watch something that's going to, I'm looking for something to make me feel better or be better today. And if you just wake up with that, you will find those things. In fact, you'll probably be surprised how many nuggets you have around you that you do, if you're not looking for it, you miss. It may be somebody in the most obscure way possible says something, and you go, oh my God, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. But if you're surrounded by people who aren't making you feel better or be better, pay attention to that too, because it's about who's on your bus and where they're sitting, and all that stuff still matters today as it ever did.
So you're talking about reading and listening, and talk about your book, because you just wrote a book. You have a podcast. Share with us what you're focused on.
Well, honestly, I don't have a podcast. I wouldn't want the responsibility of a podcast, but I like being a guest on podcasts. How's that? So hats off to you guys for doing one. So the book is called Effortless, and it looks. I got a copy here. Yeah, here we go. This is Effortless, right? Can you see that?
I love the title.
So it's 18 F words to reframe and repurpose your life. That's the book. And it kind of came about, it's kind of a book about change and architecting and navigating the kind of change that you want to have in your life, to live the life you want to live. And when you think about change, most people back into it, and they back into it typically by saying, F it. And when you do that, you're either giving up or giving in to something, I've found. So screw it, I'll do it. Screw it, I'll do it. Screw it. All right, I can't do this anymore. Screw it. And then people just resist and resist and resist until they just end up changing. And it may be good change and it may not be, but ultimately it's nothing that they really wanted or asked for. But most of the time, when you take work, for example, when a leader comes in and says, we're going to change the way we do X, they're excited about it because they know and they've thought about it, and there's a vision of what it's going to achieve, and it's going to increase efficiencies, increase profitability, and make things easier and a better workplace, and all the things they've thought about. But when they deliver that message of we're going to change the way we've done something for 10 years, everybody in the organization goes, oh, God, no. And they don't want to do it. And they just push back and they push back and push back. So typically when you think about change, it's the person who wants it who's excited about it. The person who asks for it is excited about it. So, so Effortless for me is a book about saying, what do you want? If you were honest with yourself about the changes that you want to make in your life, what do you need to make that happen? So I walk through some exercises that help people do that. I go through my own story. I created a massive amount of change in my life a few years ago. And it was very, it was just a smoke cloud of events, one after the other. But all the while, it was based on something that I believed to be true and something I wanted to do. And it was the best thing I ever did. But it was not easy to be there. And so there's a lot of cool F words that I write about in the book. And I write about float and flexibility and family and faith and foxhole, fun and freedom, and forking. There's a lot of F words that really have personal meaning to me. And I've kind of taken some time to share what those look and feel and sound like in the book to help people kind of resonate with, oh, I can do that, or oh, I can see why that's important, or oh, that's a really cool exercise. I can do everything in my life with that exercise. So it's just kind of it's a book about change ultimately, and living the life that you want to live, not the life that you are stuck living, and realizing that you always have an option to upgrade and top grade and live the life that you want to live. It doesn't really matter how much money you've got or how much money you've got to lose or what your ego thinks. If you deem something important enough to want to do something about it, you can do it, right? So that's the book.
I love that. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It was supposed to publish on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, right? How funny is that? But with all that's going on, the publisher was like, we're pulling all this stuff and we're going to wait for a more opportune time to launch. So my guess is it's going to be, based on conversations I've had, it'll be after the election cycle, because that's another, they were excited about getting this launched before the election cycle, and then this hit. So they thought, let's just push it back till after the election cycle, because it's still going to be pertinent then as it is now. So,
well, it seems more poignant now than ever. Right?
It probably does. I think it does. My wife and I were talking about that the other day. So,
I want a copy.
I know, I do too.
I'm watching, but like I have to wait. What?
You have to wait. I know, it's terrible. You have to wait. I know. Everybody's got to wait.
Somebody.
Build up.
I know. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about it. It was my goal when writing it was I wanted to write a book that wasn't just one of those ego books that you felt good about writing a book. I wanted a book that could stand on the shelves as some of the greatest books I've ever read. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. But I'm pretty excited about it. I'm proud of it. It's good.
Well, you should be, and congratulations on that. And if it's any snippet of what I know that I've heard from your mouth in years past, I'm super excited. And I'm a huge fan of when I find a book that I really love reading and relate to, I buy a bunch of them and I give them out as gifts. I give them to
Yay!
We want to be able to get the word out. I mean, that's people need.
I will let you know. You're going to be on the short list. You'll be on the short announcement list of who's going to know about it.
Okay, so, well, let us know.
We want to. As we're at the top,
definitely spread the word.
Of course.
So we've talked a lot about the micro and the now. Shaun, do you have any thoughts of guidance that you would share with whether it's someone who's a business owner or real estate agents about the longer term focus in their business?
Yeah, I think this is just a time to kind of stop. And most people don't, whether it's personal or business, those people's number one excuse for not doing things is not having the time to do them, right? When I have time to think about that, when I have time to think at all, when I have time to sit down at my computer, when I have time to everything's about when I have the time. Well, I think we've got the time. I mean, now granted, there's distractions if you have kids at home and you're doing homeschooling and, 1,000 loads of laundry and, cleaning your own house when you're not used to doing all that. I mean, I get all that. We have distractions too, but we really do have time. And I think you need to use it wisely. The question I've told everybody to ask yourself is, based on your current mindset and behaviors, if you look back on this in 3 to 5 years, what are you going to regret not doing during this time? Man, I wish I would have. I was so focused, or I was so scared about not making money, or I was so worried about, or I was so fear-based, or I was just so paralyzed, or whatever it was. Remember, you're going to have a chance to look back at this and go, that was really stupid of me. So if you have a sense of what you're going to look back on and regret, think in terms of that. If you're going to think out into the future, think in terms of what are you going to regret doing or not doing that you did or didn't do during this time, because that you think will make your business better. And if just because things have changed in the world doesn't really mean that your goals have changed, or what you want to be known for have changed, or how you want to accomplish things have changed. It actually may make that path a little easier with some of the things we've come up with as new norms of doing business on the fly. Or it may have challenged some things, and you might have to just take a different route than you thought you were going to have to do. But I think anybody that really, this is a time to work on your business and not in it. And you've got more time to work on it than in it than ever. And really think about, what are your options for if the goals are not negotiable. Reevaluate them. I mean, and make sure that the goals you got going into this are still the goals you want to have going out. And if the answer is yes, then you have to look at the strategy that I had to get there. Does that still play for me? Or has something come into the purview that allows me to take a detour in certain areas to get there another way? Maybe that way's faster. Maybe that way's longer. Maybe my outlook goes from a 3-year plan to a 5-year plan. Maybe my 5-year plan goes to a 3-year plan because I figured out I can do this in a more leveraged fashion. But I think you just have to evaluate, go back and assess, are the goals you've got still relevant? And are they still the goals that you want to keep? Do you want to make any changes or not? And if the answer to that is yes, we're all good there, then you have to back up and say, okay, well, let's talk about the pathway to get there. And based on what I thought I was going to have to do to get there, is that still the case? Or do I need to do it a different way? Do I need to hire a different person to do something? Are the people I've got on my team all mediocre and need to go because I figured that out? Because you're probably noticing, if you're working a team or running a team, you've probably already figured out who on your team has a great can-do attitude and who on your team is Chicken Little. And it's probably an opportunity to go, I don't think Chicken Little is going to be with us for the next 3 to 5 years if based on, that's not the mentality I want in this position on my team. So you're going to be able to make some adjustments. And we one of the things, sports teach us a lot. And I think when you look at the sports world, they have the opportunity to go to halftime and stop playing for a while and reevaluate their game plan. And they go, hey, was the game plan, we're getting crushed out there. I think there was something wrong with our game plan, or it was raining and we weren't counting on the rain. So everybody knows that the team that wins is the one that makes the quickest and best decisions to change when they need to change. And I think you've got to look at this a little bit like a halftime session where you go, does the game plan work? Do we stick with the game plan? What do we change? What do we change? What do we change? All right, let's go out and win. Because when this light turns green, we're back on the field and we better have a game plan. And if we haven't thought about it, we've really wasted a good halftime session to go back out there and try to sharpen the saw.
You and Brad used to always talk about halftime, and in the middle of the year, we would always check in the middle of the year saying, okay, it's halftime.
Right. I love it when people pay attention, Elizabeth. I love it.
I pay attention. I mean, years later, I pay attention. I'm telling you, you and Brad are some profound, leaders in my world. I mean, he's a great human being. He is and so are you. But yes, we would talk about exactly what you're just saying, halftime, but it's usually the middle of the year, like July or whatever. Okay, what are we going to do to finish the rest of the year strong? But you're perfectly positioning that now. You're right. I mean, I've been looking back as you're talking, I've been making some tweaks and adjustments. I'm hiring different people that I've needed to hire. I'm
Right.
getting rid of things that I've needed to get rid of. I'm focusing on the things that I've been procrastinating about, because quite frankly, none of us want to do it. But I'm using this time valuably. And just like you said, for the game time, I'm going to look at that more. This is my halftime.
It is. It's everybody's
Love
halftime.
it.
Make the most of it.
We're so grateful that you carved some time out to chat with both of us.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's been
So
fun. It's
great.
nice to meet you, Renee. It's you're obviously awesome. And if you're affiliated with this one on my screen, you're in good company, and you're all right by me, because Elizabeth is as good as they get. So when she reached out, I was like, absolutely, I'll count me in.
Well, Shaun, and I've got to say thank you, because I know you're pulled in a million different directions, and people are coming to you and talking to you and wanting to hear your take on things. And so for you to even take time out of your day and spend it a little bit with us, I mean, that meant the world when you said yes. So I appreciate you.
Will you hold that book up one more time though?
Yeah.
I will hold the book up
Renee?
one more
Yeah,
time.
that book.
Yes, please. We can't wait for it to come out. Oh my goodness.
This is the wimpy galley copy. They call them galley copies. They're the ones to make sure they're your last chance before they print it in hard copy, to make sure that it works and there's no typos. But we're going to miss something, I'm sure. But
That's
F it, right?
Keep us
F
posted
it.
as soon as you get your new release date.
We will do it. I will keep you posted.
Thank you, Shaun. Stay safe.
Hey, I will. You guys keep doing a great job. You're making a big difference out there, I know. So keep sharing the good word. It'll pay off in many ways.
Thank you. And don't be such a stranger. If we can ever do anything, reach out.
You got it. Y'all take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.